In the eternal expanse of the field of reeds, where the Nile flows without end, I stand before the judgment of Osiris. My heart has been weighed against Mahat's feather. The greatness achieved in my lifetime was built upon the ruins of establishments that I brought down brick by brick, talatat by talatat. I watched as my heart dropped towards the sands and not rise towards the heavens, and with a wave of Anubis's hand, my name was struck through by the stylus of Thoth. I found myself here in twilight between the two worlds, reflecting upon my actions and my words, the heaviness lingering in my car, as an unjustified soul. I was Vizier, servant of Pharaohs, architect of their visions, overseer of their reigns, and, in the end, I rose to be called king. Yet my path was paved with blood, betrayal, and ambition that gnaws at me even now. As I recount my life, my deeds, and the regrets that bind me to the mortal world, I am drawn to face the truth of my actions. I began as a loyal servant under Amenhotep, the Magnificent, and the formidable Queen Tia, to whom I was linked by family ties and held the deepest affection. From the beginning, our bond was strong. As master of the horse and overseer of all works, I held the reins of power, advising the king, managing his armies, and overseeing the grand monuments that glorified Amun-Ra. The priesthood of Amun was mighty then, their wealth rivaling the throne, and I learned early to navigate their influence with care. The wisdom of Queen Tia taught me the art of survival. Bend with the wind, but never break. When Amenhotep the Magnificent joined the gods along with his firstborn, Thutmose, his younger son also named Amenhotep, chose his new role as Akhenaten, and the world shifted. Akhenaten's zeal for the Aten, a sun disk stripped of Amun's shadowed mystery, upended the divine order that I knew so well. He moved the court to Akhenaten, his new city, and naturally I followed, adapting my ways, my prayers, and my loyalties to his vision. I traded Amun's name for the Atens in my prayers, not out of faith but necessity. It was but one name for another. I had already moved from one master to another. To do the same with my offerings was trivial. As Vizier, I managed the transition, quelled dissent among the nobles, and ensured the builders carved Akhenaten's dream from the desert to create his sun city, Akhenaten. Nefertiti, his radiant queen, watched me closely, for she recognized the power I held, but I proved my worth in her eyes too, balancing loyalty with pragmatism. Akhenaten's reign was a storm of new ideals and fragile doctrines. His rejection of Amun alienated the priests, and his focus on the Aten left the people of the two lands restless. I saw the cracks early, his lack of a male heir, the whispers of discontent from the priests and nobles attempting to understand the new religion that was being forced upon them, the growing power of his brother Smenkhkare, named co-regent with Meryra as his queen. I maneuvered carefully, pledging loyalty to Akhenaten while also cultivating necessary ties with the young impressionable Smenkhkare. The court was a web of alliances, and I was its spider. Then came the revelation that shattered the royal house. One evening, in the shadowed halls of Akhenaten summoned me alone. His face was taut, his voice a low hiss. "Tutankhamun," he said, "my sister, my great royal wife, has betrayed me. She and Smenkhkare have birthed a son, Tutankamun. She has called him the living image of Amun. Their dark union of blood mocks and betrays the Aten's light shining upon this family. I never want to see her face lit by its radiance again." His words were a command, veiled but clear. I understood. Tutankhamun's betrayal, her secret union with Smenkhkare, producing a male heir that threatened Akhenaten's legacy and the fragile fiction of his divine family. I acted swiftly, quietly. Tutankhamun was lured to a secluded chamber under the pretense of reconciliation with her brother. A trusted agent wielding a heavy weapon struck her in the face, shattering bone and ending her life. The blow was deliberate, a literal fulfillment of Akhenaten's wish. Her body was spirited away, her name erased from the records. In his grief, in hidden recognition of her position as great royal wife, Akhenaten ordered her to be interred far from Akhenaten, in a modest tomb in the necropolis of Waset, the heart of Amun's domain. Her lavish coffin in the style of Nubian wig was accompanied by 4 alabaster canopic vases, as a gesture of remorse, were placed beside the coffin, and her legacy was buried with her. I ensured the court remained ignorant, and Tutankhamun, named by his mother, became Tutankamun, the living image of Aten, and raised within the royal court as Akhenaten's son. My ambition, always smoldering, grew bolder as Akhenaten and his family became more and more reclusive, spending their time in the grounds of his city of the sun, Akhenaten, and neglecting his duties outside of its walls. I was free to roam the 2 lands, going about my own business, building my own network of loyal and trusted subjects. Akhenaten's reign ended abruptly with his disappearance. His Aten priest, Meryra, claimed that the king had been taken by the light of the Aten. I did not understand what had happened, only that Queen Nefertiti took the same path with her own disappearance. I arranged the silence of the high priest, Meryra, as well, so that his testimony, as he claimed, did not deify the divine rise of Akhenaten into that of the immortal being of Aten. The void that was left created chaos and required a firm hand, my hand, to bring it back to order. The kingdom was split between those loyal to the king and his Aten religion and the old order of Amun-Ra that has retreated into the shadowed, crumbling halls of the closed temples. It would require careful strategy to maneuver my own position between a weakened royal family, attempting to fill the void that the king and queen had created by their disappearance. But his daughters were no match for the dominance of a male heir, and the nobles grew restless, seeking strength in a new pharaoh. They had endured years of the weakness of Akhenaten, who ignored their demands as trivial compared to the power of the Aten that spoke only to the king. I saw opportunity in Smenkhkare and Merit Aten, young and malleable, lack of experience and influence over their disgruntled subjects. I whispered to them of power, nudging them to eclipse Akhenaten and Nefertiti. But their reign was brief, their inexperience a liability sanctioned by the unrest of the people that demanded change. I arranged their quiet removal. Poison was efficient and easy to arrange. Guilty parties become difficult to name with so many opposed to their reign. Akhenaten's other daughters too vanished one by one, forgotten, their deaths cloaked in mystery. With Horemheb, the general who shared my disdain for the Aten, I orchestrated the dismantling of Akhenaten. Its temples were razed, its stones scattered as if the city had never been. The light of the Aten had become the dust of the desert. And so, to release the burden of my unseemly actions from here in the twilight of the afterlife, I hereby confess to my former machinations. I want to make it quite clear to the gods that I continue to recognize the divine sanctity of the royal family and their right to receive the full protocols the afterlife offered in their deaths. The bodies that had been previously buried in Akhenaten were moved to Thebes. This was a difficult part of the planning. The broken body of Sidamun was removed from her coffin and her remains placed in another tomb with that of her dearest mother, Queen Ti. I had Smenkhkare placed in her coffin instead, her name removed and the image altered to reflect a king's image. Tutankhamun, now restored to his name, Tutankamun, was my next move. A boy king, barely 9, he was the perfect vessel, a bridge between 2 worlds. I collaborated with the reinstated priests of Amun-Ra who welcomed the return of their god. We moved the court back to Waset, restored Amun's temples, and renamed the boy to erase the Aten's stain. As Vizier and named Divine Father, I guided him, but Tutankhamun grew willful, his confidence swelling under the priest's influence, his military's commands, and away from my influences. He began to assert himself, questioning my counsel, aligning with Horemheb, giving him greater powers to expand the armies of the two lands. I saw my control slipping, my dream of the throne threatened. I acted again, as I always had. Tutankhamun's death was subtle, a fall, a wound that festered until it weakened him enough to take his life. The court mourned, but I moved swiftly. No records remained of my involvements. No witnesses of deaths, no wagging tongues, no suspicions raised. Quick, subtle, successful. I saw to it that Tutankhamun received the full honors of a lavish funeral in honor of his support of Amun-Ra. His untimely death hastened the need for a tomb to be made available in which to place his earthly remains. The riches and treasures that had been prepared for the death of Akhenaten had never been used for his funeral, due to his mystical disappearance or ascension whispered amongst those who still believed in the dying religion of the Aten. Akhenaten's sarcophagus, decorated coffin, and other precious objects joined those objects commissioned and used by Tutankhamun during his brief years on the throne. With Akhenaten, his widow, under my protection and guardianship, I claimed the throne, marrying her to legitimize my rule. At last, I was Pharaoh, the culmination of decades of maneuvering. But my reign was brief. My age had become a burden through so many years of patient but relentless positioning, and Horemheb, ever watchful, ever astute to my own actions, waited to claim all of what I had won. In the afterlife, I see the cost of my path. I regret the blood on my hands, Sitamun's broken face, Smenkar's silenced voice, and particularly Tutankhamun's stolen youth. I served the two lands, but I served myself more. My loyalty shifted like the Nile's rise and fall, from Amun to Aten and back, not from faith but from survival. I betrayed Akhenaten, who trusted me as a friend, Nefertiti, who honored me like a father, and Dobree-Carey, who looked to me for guidance and support. Tutankamun, the boy I raised and mentored from birth, was my greatest triumph and my deepest shame. Every rival, every threat I had eradicated to clear a path to greatness, my greatness, but at a huge cost. The justification of my heart had been judged to be unworthy. I am a Vizier, Pharaoh, and now a shade in eternity. I achieved the throne, but at such price. I pray to Ma'at for balance, to Amun-Ra for forgiveness, even to Akhenaten's Aten to shine light and favor upon me. But the faces of those I destroyed haunt me. My ambition was my strength and my curse, and in the field of reeds I wander, seeking peace I may never find.